be working very well and accomplishing what needs to be done through the areas that are outlying from the Clean Tatla Lake area. Those permits will stay in place going through there until we get notification from the fire center that they can lift that order from an evacuation order to an alert, and at that time then we can open up the highway. We use the permits and keep it closed in that sense, really for a control basis. If something happens very quickly as it can with fires, then we have a system in place that says, okay, close the highway, don't let anybody through until that event is over, even if they do have permits, and that has happened a couple of times that we've had to do that. So that's the fail-safe on the highway itself, so that we don't get, if we were just to open it and say, you're good to go, and something happens, I don't know about you folks, but I wouldn't want to be a part of the potential tragedy that could come from that. So those permits are working well. They're allowing people to get through to your communities, to go fishing or hunting down the road here. I don't know what all can do, but I know there was some discussion about businesses when the pilot car system was on, that the cars were going straight through and stuff. So the permits allow people to pull off once they get through the Clean Tatla area. So that's about all I can put towards it.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, with regards to permitting, permits are very difficult to get, whether we're residents or not. For example, if we go out, we have to worry about getting back in again.
Okay.
Specifically, clean residents, I'd like to ask all of you today, when you came through on Highway 20, were you in any danger? Were you in any danger?
No, not at the moment, but that's okay. The key point.
So I've got residents down at Clean that asked for permits to come to this meeting, and they were refused by CRD. They were told if they left their homes in Clean to come to this meeting, they would not be permitted back to their homes. How is the permitting system working? Okay,
so the permits, first of all, and you've got a large question there, more than one inside one. So first of all, when you have an evacuation order, people are supposed to leave. There's those that choose not to leave. That's not part of what I can look after or not. Whether they get back in is not part of what I can look after or not. Now, when it comes to the permitting system, there is several avenues that have been put in place. The permits can be getting at Anaheim Lake. They can be getting from Williams Lake. They can be done over the phone, where we can have pictures taken, and that's been happening, is sent through the phone to the participant, and we also been able to email. So I'm not exactly sure what else we could do with that, as far as making it accessible to everybody. But if somebody has a suggestion, then
the options are there, but the permits aren't being given out. There's all kinds of options.
There's no permits being refused right now. None.
So none. People that are clean.
But you have to understand. That's the other end of the spectrum that falls outside of my purview. If you're living in an evacuated order zone, I cannot control. If you leave, okay. The law states, as far as I know, that they should not be letting you back in. So.
Yes, over in the corner there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why it is so difficult to get permits. Like I applied yesterday in Anaheim, I was told I get one. Didn't arrive so far. And then I was like, how do I get back? And that lady told me I have to go to CRD office in Williams Lake to get one. So I call CRD office. So there was a very nice fellow by the name of Larry.
Yep.
And I go like, I need some sort of confirmation that I can make it back, because they don't want to email you permits for whatever reason, even if you told me that they do. That I will be able to drive back with my full loaded truck of groceries. I was not in Williams Lake for 2.5 months now. And so nobody can grant me that. They say if the fire comes. But I remember the Bull Canyon fire. We were driving on the highway through Bull Canyon. There was fire on both sides.
That's right, yeah.
And there was a pilot car which was going constantly back and forth. Not that, excuse me, BS, with 3 times a day, one direction. So what's the difference between the fire in Bull Canyon a few years ago and the Clean fire right now. And the question is, why don't they email those permits? It's a major pain to run after a piece of paper.
If you have access to email,
I
then,
do have
then,
access.
then I don't know why somebody told you no, but I will definitely, when we go back to Williams
Ask
Lake,
Larry.
I will talk to Larry. Larry's in the same room as I am, so.
Perfect.
And it was discussions with them that said, we'll take a picture on our phone and text it to them, we'll email them if they
Try
have
to
any.
text it to me.
Sorry?
Try to text it.
Well, I'm just saying, you know what I mean. Okay, but there are areas that that do get them that way via taking a picture of it and sending it. But I will follow up with why they're saying no email. If you have an email address, there is no reason why it can't be done in email. That was part of the program.
I will give it to you
I will,
afterwards.
yeah, afterwards, give me your name and stuff.
Okay, well, I think the next question is in the back there. Yes.
Just wondered, when this all started and everybody was told to leave Nimpo Lake, that as an essential service, I was heard the road maintenance contractor did not need to be here. He was told, you boys don't need to be there, get out.
The maintenance contractors were told that for anything other than what the fire center was asking them to do was not considered an essential service, and that they did not need to be there. That's correct. So the fire center would define the areas that they needed roads graded or whatever was to be done, and other than that, the rest of it, the normal day-to-day business was not considered essential service.
So if somebody hits a cow or a horse on the road, just leave it there, eh?
Well, we can what if
Trees fall
till it comes
on the
home,
road.
but it was being monitored.
So, okay, the guys leave, you need somebody to pull the trees off the road, or who do you get then?
We got you fellows to do that. We
were told we were not needed, so we left.
No, that's not what you were told, because I was the one that worked with Sam and several and the other and Pat Gunderson up here, and there was some very clear rules that were defined, and that was not that you couldn't that the movement couldn't be done around to remove stuff that was dangerous or potentially in the road. But it did follow through with the fire center. The fire center, there was lots of areas where IRL or whoever wanted to conduct their regular business, and they were told no.
All right, question in the corner there.
Earlier on, I think it was in July, but the road was closed for people coming in, but not going out. And you know, I'm in the tourism business,
Right.
and you know, it's kind of difficult if people, you know, can't come in. And I just wonder how it could be unsafe to travel one direction on the road but not the other way.
The only time that as far as I know, that happened was when the alerts were turning to orders, people were evacuating, and then the only way out, and it was even divided on the last one. Some had to go to Ballacoola, and some went out to Williams Lake and points beyond. But that's the only time that the eastbound was left open, was as an egress route.
That was
to
for a month.
weeks.
That was for over a month on Drive BC. Every day we checked it.
Yeah,
Eastbound's open for evacuation. Westbound is closed
That
to all
was-
traffic.
That was after, I have to go back and look at the dates, but I don't know if it
Middle
was.
of July,
it was-
from the beginning of August.
Okay, so that would have been while the alert was on, or the order was on during Risky Creek. I have to go back and look at it. I don't have all those notes with me here.
We waited, we've been trying to move for ages. We waited from the beginning of around the time the fire started, around 7th of July, right through until I think it was the last week of July that it finally opened up, actually it opened up behind us to two-way traffic. And then it slammed back on again. So to the best of my knowledge, and I'll look it up, it was at least 3 weeks and probably closer to a month. It's only been eastbound.
I think the permits at not too far into July were for both directions, because we were, because once.
We had 1 week to go in and out.
1 week?
One week,
yeah,
that
1
we
week.
go
I'd have to
in
go
and
back
out.
and look
The
at it.
last week of July.
Yeah.
Okay, one person at a time, and let's remember we're all trying to work together here. So,
No, it's okay.
maybe one or two last questions, specific questions for Phil, at the back there. That's, yeah, you.
Can you explain about the permits, when Anaheim Nimpo was evacuated and the highway was closed? I decided to stay behind for about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Then I was told to leave by my boss. So I packed up, I went to the store to fill up, and I noticed 5 pickup trucks with their boats, fishing boats, going right through to Bella Coola to go fishing when the highway was closed. How could somebody like that get a permit? Whereas locals around here were told, if you are out, if you decide to stay in an order and you decide to go to the store for groceries or whatever, and you are spotted, then you will be escorted out of the evacuation order. How can they be?
When Anaheim was on evacuation order,
Yes.
there was nothing coming through that come through the CRD as far as permits go. So if they got there, I have no idea where they were.
I specifically asked them at the store, like, how did you guys get to help through here when it's closed? Oh, we got a permit. For what? To go on a holiday?
That's
I'm actually waiting for verification.
That's a surprise for me, so if you've got copies of them, I would love to have them.
So, sorry, one person at a time. And next question was back in the corner.
So anyways, I own the Nimpo Lake store, and I can verify this. Every day in the evacuation zone, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 high wind days, there was tourism coming through from both directions, Bella Coola and Lanes Lake.
Yeah.
And in person said, just like what James is saying, nobody was on to move around here, but it said tourism was allowed to come through, and I had these people stop and fill out, and said, these are people I see every year that were coming through.
And that was when,
This was
I think, well, what was it, 3 or 4 days that Anaheim was
There were
closed?
6 days on evacuation
6 days?
order, and yeah, so the first.
So
day-
during that time?
Yes, during that time, the first day or two when the winds were high, there was nobody, but after that, for the last 4 days of the order, I had all kinds of tourism coming through, and yet, as I said, nobody's allowed to travel around here.
I can't answer that because I don't actually issue the permits, but I can certainly find out why and make sure that it doesn't happen. Because there's no way that fishermen should have been going through when that evacuation order was on with Anaheim and you guys. There's no way it should have happened, so.
So maybe it sounds like maybe this might be a good topic for future debrief, and then we can come back with more. Maybe you can provide us with the information that you're talking about. We can get that to Phil. We can come back and have a more detailed discussion about this at a later point. And thanks for your understanding. We'll also save some time again if you want to talk to Phil after questions at the end. We'll leave that for the end. So just so that we can keep going on.
Thanks.
Thanks, Phil. All right, so next up we have Sergeant Scott Clay with the Anaheim RCMP detachment.
Thanks, Emily. Thank you, guys. I am your local detachment commander. Yay. Thanks, Colonel. Some of you I do know. Many of you I've met over the course of the last 8 months. For the most part, I think it's been on good terms. I've been on the ground since day one, standing in the front yard of Terra Nostra, looking at that lightning struck above Clearwater Lake, and we started talking about what was going to come. I really appreciate the local knowledge that's been passed on the last 47-ish days that we've been in here. Normally, there's myself, and there's 2 to 4 constables. We get pretty used to that. You know, the 5 of us in the community, we get out, we're pretty relaxed. We have lots of good conversations. I know there's been a heavy increase in the community the last month and a half. At one point, I had 25 police officers from BC and Manitoba. At one point, I had 70 military when they did a switch over. That wasn't planned. That wasn't asked for. It was just the way they switched their membership out. There's been some concerns voiced to me personally through various means of communication, whether it's social media, whether it's letters, whether it's things posted at the store, and then through some of my contacts as to why is it this way? Why do we have to have this? So what I just want to touch on is a little bit of what we've done as an organization, as the RCMP, and what I've tried to do as the local detachment commander to manage and to direct those resources that we've had. So we started out with Clean and Clean. We had that late night evacuation order that came down. There was myself, 2 constables, and 2 fish cops who came up the hill from Bella Coola to help us out. And we went around Clean and Clean at 11 o'clock at night, and we notified. Pretty much it was, here's your evacuation order, here's your boundaries, go tell these people what's going on. So we did that. Pretty much everybody stayed. Because everybody who was in that area, from One-Eyed Lake, Dowling Road, up to the McClinchy Bridge, 2 days later, 3 days later, was on that fire. I had some of my senior staff come in from Prince George and from Williams Lake. And I said, Scott, what do you need? So, well, I need some help. I have the community of Vanaham, Nimpo, Charlotte, Clean a Clean, the Ogacho Nation, all the seasonal people. I've got this massive area and I have 3 people. So they sent me 10 constables. Fresh off the bus from Surrey. They took their local knowledge while they were here. They shared it with me. I've only been here for 8 months. I've been in the Caribou for 15 years, but only here for 8 months. They gave me a little bit of insight as to how things work here. What happened back in 2010? What happened back in 2003? They also took that time to share it with the other members who came in, to help direct some of these Surrey, Langley, Burnaby members. Hey, this is how things work here. We've encouraged the people who've been here to get out, meet people in the community. You would have seen a lot of people driving around the last couple of weeks. A lot of police vehicles, both marked and unmarked, down all sorts of bizarre roads, maybe in your driveways or up in your areas on your ranches. In the back, I've got 2 gentlemen who are dressed in all blue. Lyle's from Alberta, Ian's from Port Moody. They're part of what's called our integrated TAC team. Their job, they are the experts in things like evacuations, large crowds. These guys have been in the community, and their counterparts from Alberta and BC have been in the community for the last 2.5 weeks, doing planning, creating documents, creating procedures by which we as a community, not just my office, but us as a community, can say, okay, if we have to go, this is where people are, here's what some of our options are. We've reached out to some of our locals that we have here for knowledge, looking for things. Because we all know there is stuff everywhere up here. We all have stuff in different places. We're very spread out. So when these guys are out around, driving around, they're just looking, finding information, feeding it back to us so that we can collect and we know where stuff is. What's some of the stuff that we have to be concerned about? The roadblocks, I know, or the road checks have been a sore spot. They're staffed by at least 1, if not 2 police officers. And there's usually a contingent of military with them, either regular or the Rangers. I've had conversation with a few people in this room over the permitting process, what my limitations are, what my understanding is. I've tried to answer questions the best I can and put things to the right venue. Those of you that have asked me direct questions, I've taken those questions up to where I can, whether it's the CRD, whether it's MOT. I'm on the phone usually 3 times a day, if not more, with our command center in Williams Lake. And when information is coming to me from the community about why are things the way they are, or can we change this, I'm bringing that information forward to those people. On top of that, if something doesn't make sense to me, or I don't understand why a decision is made the way it is, I am standing up and asking that question on behalf of the community. You know, I live here. My members live here. Our families were affected by the orders for evacuation, the orders for alert also. You know, all of us did have to send our families out. You know, I've had an opportunity over the last 47 days to meet a few people who've been affected more than once. There was a young woman down the road from the office who was out here for rodeo weekend from Spoken Lake when they got evacuated. So she spent the summer out here with their little 11-month-old until I had to go down and say, I'm sorry, but I gotta evacuate you again. Lots of us have been affected by this. My office is just trying to filter the information the best that we can, deliver what we have to the community in a safe, respectful, and clear manner. There is some stuff that we can do. We've worked with the community. We did the evacuation and the whole thing about children. We did have a few residences within the evacuated area where kids were present. We worked with the parents. We worked with the lodge owners and the staff who were there to make plans. My main thing I said to the people in my office is, you will not come down hard and heavy on my communities. We will be respectful. We will work with these members of the community to try to find a reasonable solution. If that hasn't happened, I want to know about it. Some of you said things to me. I've addressed them. I'd like to keep that going forward until such time as whoever it was said the snow flies. With that, does anybody have any questions for me?
Yes, they're in the, yes, you, sir.
Yeah, I'm a permanent resident of Charlotte Lake. And I'm just a little confused on the kind of the evacuation order status and how that's reviewed. And I mean, right now I know the south end of Charlotte Lake is still under an evacuation order. And I don't know if these are, I assume they're reviewed daily, if not hourly, to try to minimize the inconvenience to people who are affected by it. So today we have a sole resident, a senior, all by herself, the only person who is affected by this order. We live kilometers away, we are unable to go and check up on her. We have Checkpoint Charlie up there at Towdystown and Highway 20. She's the only resident. I don't understand why, and there's no imminent danger. I mean, I think we all of us that live at Charlotte can see right now there's no imminent danger from the Clean fire. It's crystal clear up there. Why this woman is imprisoned on her property and not allowed to come into town for groceries. There's a checkpoint there that could make sure she's the only one. The only rationale I can see is that for the CRD it's kind of convenient to not have to supervise her campground down there because she lives right past it, but just doesn't seem to be reasonable. There seems to be a lack of common sense that the authorities, and I'm not sure which agency would be responsible, but basically has abandoned one of our citizens.
Okay. So when it comes to identifying boundaries like that, I don't have direct say in, okay, here's where it's going to be. What happens is I get an evacuation or an alert order and there's a map attached to it. It gives me a defined set of like a defined location. So what I do and what we've been doing here is, okay, let's look at it from like a military standpoint. I verify the order. You know, okay, I've got your order. Am I understanding this correctly? And then I look at it because it may have been drawn up with someone who has local knowledge. It may not. I may look and say, like, you know what, I can't work with that because of where the roads are, for example. With respect to the Charlotte Lake evacuation boundaries, I don't know. That would be a question better suited, I believe, for the CRD, and I believe Mr. Richmond will speak to that one there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, maybe we can hold that question and then we can answer that one more fully in a few minutes. Yes?
I just have some clarification on how you check for permits through your Checkpoint Charlies. The comments that were made from James and from Richard about the fishermen coming into Bellacoola. I work for Bellacoola Fisheries, so I know firsthand. I processed their charters. And when they were coming through, word got out to these people throughout the province, wherever they were coming from, that even though they had their totes or whatever, if they wore volunteer firefighting t-shirts, they were just waved through. without having to have a permit. So where does the common sense equation come into that checkpoint? And a double question with that is also with status cards. Same idea. Wave through, no proper permitting. So I'm confused on that issue.
No, for sure. So yeah, so going with the boats, because I had a strip torn off me about the boats from Dawn up the road there.
Yeah.
When they were coming through. I think we all know when she tears a strip off you, she tears a strip off you. So she tore a strip off me pretty good on that, and then not too long after that, I went down and I had a chat with Rich. I'm like, okay, I got to figure out what's going on here. Got on the phone and we determined the pass-through permitting process. But that led to that next part of the conversation, which was, okay, what are we doing to verify that people aren't blowing smoke
Exactly.
and taking advantage of these, I'm going to admit, these young, junior members of the RCMP?
Right.
Because I did have a lot of members who had like under a year of service that were here for a bit. Say, okay, what are you doing to verify? Let's talk about the common sense. So we discussed status cards, we discussed essential services, we discussed the volunteer, volunteer fire type situation, we'll do that. And we kind of went a little bit to the other side where we had that hiccup for the first day with the essential services where the mail truck and the food truck and the milk truck all got stuck in Tattle Lake. So we kind of went from one stretch to the other where we found that common ground, which led us to, you know what? Daily at our briefings at 6 a.m.-ish and 6 p.m.-ish when we were dealing with our groups that were coming in to say, okay, common sense, however, things to look for. Someone wears a volunteer or a red shirt because they say they're working for BC Fire, verify it. If there's no indication that it's anything more than, hey, I'm with the fire, press a bit more. You're police officers. Use your investigative skills. Now that may have come across as a little bit hard and heavy to someone who may have got stuck up in that there. But I was trying to find that happy balance. Because there were people that were taking advantage of the situation. That were not being honest, that were not trying to go through the legitimate channels. Whether it was because they didn't want to, they were frustrated by it, I can't speak to that. We did have some hiccups along the way. This is a continuous, ongoing thing for us. This is not, I'm a police officer. I, catch bad guys. My guys in the office, they catch bad guys. This is kind of new for us, it's not a regular thing, so we're working as we go to try to fix this so that we can curb some of this frustration.
Right, because there was, it caused a big problem, obviously, and it was kind of rubbed in people's faces.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I got through, that sort of idea. When you have people legitimately sitting for days at the CRD office in Williams Lake, trying legitimately to get a legitimate permit, and these people are just flying through, and they're making jokes about it. And it wasn't right, and like you say, from moving forward, that this is something, and I understand, you get the rookies up here and everything else, and God bless them for being up here and helping out, but there's gotta be from somebody like yourself or the higher ups, you've gotta set those ground rules in the beginning so the system isn't abused.
You're right, and that's where we've gone forward, and myself and Sergeant Morrison in the back there, him and I, that has been our consistent message to our membership now is, okay, if it doesn't smell right, dig deeper. If you have to wave someone off to the side to dig deeper, let other people through.
I think the next question is in the back there.
Me?
Yeah.
I might not be using the right words because I'm from Switzerland. I think it might not be good enough. I went to Williams Lake yesterday, and for the general information, I had a permit. I got it from Mrs. Chamberlain in Anaheim. I went to Williams Lake, got my permit back again. I want to say thank you for one thing. Mobilization, being mobile, is a human right. And I said at all the stops, Checkpoint Charlie's, I said I'm thankful at least the only person who can rightly stop you on the road is the police. No other person is entitled. And I was glad to see at both points there was police. They were very polite, so I said something nice. Now I'm saying something bad. And Scott, I wish you really went, I'm using names now. Bill Smiley.
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing that rightly here? He's probably not here. he lent me, borrowed me a pump to help down at the precipice. So I don't know him very much. He's an old guy, he's more than 70 years of age. He was using the words, and that really, I don't even know what officer he's talking about, but please follow up with him. He's using the words to me, very friendly guy. He said to me he wished he would come along and fight, you know, as old as he is. He says the police officer that he was talking to, well, now I'm literally abusive, his words, up to physical.
Okay.
And that, you said yourself, you know, I don't want that to happen to my local sheep.
Yeah.
If you so want, because you're the shepherd. But I don't know, I wasn't there, but I'm quoting him. And that to me is way beyond, you know, like abusive and physical, like, you know, being pushed around or
Yeah.
whatever. No way.
Yeah.
And I can't verify it, I'm just quoting him.
No, I appreciate that. I know Bill. I've talked to Bill a couple times since I've been in the area. So that is something I will follow up with him on that because, you know, and this goes to anybody else in the room. You know, I'm very much an upfront person. Everybody has credit with me to start out with. I'm open. I have big shoulders. If you have a question, you got a problem with something I'm doing, something I'm saying, something my guy is doing, whether it's that.
Told I can't even go to my neighbor's for a glass of wine. All right, so if it's gonna be that heavy-handed, is it gonna be, then there should be some consistency there. So the fellows I spoke to said, no, we've got some discretionary power. Like, you know, if you need to go check on the neighbors, if you need to go do this, you're probably not gonna get hassled too much. On the other hand, I think it was one of the local cops, Zach, that told Richard that under no circumstances was he to deliver groceries to anyone. Under no circumstances was anybody to step foot off their property. Where's the consistency there?
Okay. So Richard and I did talk a little bit about the whole grocery thing. We actually spent a bit of time on that in there. So if you actually go through, when you look at the Emergency Protection Act, there is the piece in there that says about being off your property, being escorted, resisting arrest, may be arrested. You know, I'm really narrowing down the passages there, but the discretion that we have there was, you know, am I going to say, oh, Jane, you're off your property, please come with me. Okay, we're going to clean a clean. You know, you're off the island. No, we're going to say, okay, you know what? We got the order in place. Probably should stay at home. We weren't kicking people out of the lands. We did have a little bit of a miscommunication is the wrong word. We had a debate about that in the office, and at the end of the debate, I basically said, okay, I appreciate what you said, and you're right, it was Zach, because Zach did come to me after that conversation, so I have no problem saying that there. Like, yeah, I can appreciate what you're saying. We're not encouraging people to be out and about, but in the same token, we're not going to say, okay, you got to go. So I addressed that when it was brought to my attention there, because I had said, as my rule in the office, we will have our discretion on that. There's some things I have no discretion on, some things that are beyond my control, but that was one of those things where we weren't going to go start booting people off of the land because they were.
Okay, so if this power is given to you through the declaration of emergency legislation, what protects us from somebody in your position in the future being hard-handed, arresting us from doing that? What can we do to make sure that that is not going to happen when we don't have a reasonable person
Okay.
like
So,
you in power?
Okay, so one of the things that Sergeant Morrison and I are working on right now is exactly that. You know, the next time. The next time this happens, what do we do? What did we learn from this time? What
So-
can we do?
so
Let me just give me a second here
Okay.
because I think I can answer your question for you. What can we do next time, and how do we go about doing it? So if I'm not here, this happens in 5 years from now, and there's a new sergeant and a new cadre of constables here, you know, and adding something like, you know, when we start going down this area where we have fires, floods, whatever the case is there, you know, striking right out of the gate a working committee, members of the community, because we don't have organized communities here. So I don't have a mayor and council that I can say, okay, what are our rules? What are we going to do here? How do we want to enforce this? But having representation from Nimpo, from Charlotte, from Anaheim, from Clean a Clean, to exactly address that. What's the expectation that we want in this here, you know? So that if
Well,
someone.
I'm just gonna stop you
Okay.
here. According to the legislation and the act of declaring an emergency, the only person that can do that is the person at the top, the premier
Yeah.
or the minister.
Yeah.
So going down the line, no one at the bottom can make their own rules.
No, but if I can advocate, or my position can advocate for that,
But,
this is how I
but
want
that
to do
doesn't
this.
guarantee us
No,
anything.
no, it doesn't.
That doesn't guarantee us
No, it doesn't.
anything. So I want protection in place coming from the top.
Okay.
That when the order is drawn to declare a state of emergency, he curtails your powers. And
Okay.
it says you cannot arrest people, you cannot do this to them, you cannot do that to them. That's the only place that we are guaranteed to have those rights.
Okay. So what?
So it doesn't matter what you think on the ground.
Right. So I guess my question to you then, and we can take this off if you want afterwards, is how can I help you get what you want there? What can I do for you? And I'm willing to work with you on that, and if it involves us having more conversations with our elected officials or going with them
So-
further, I will help you with that.
So when all these decisions are being made, the declaration coming from the top was carte blanche. I don't think there was any holding back of powers or curtailing of powers. And so when it's coming down to the CRD and to your rules, what you're following, are you following the state of emergency rules? Or is the RCMP under its own umbrella and they follow their rules?
We follow the state of emergency rules, and we try to work with the communities and the population within the communities to come to a reasonable solution that sees everybody, not maybe necessarily happy, but at least taken care of, or their concerns addressed.
So when we're coming down from the top, and the CRD is making all these calls that the people in the Clean and Clean are under house arrest, but the vacationer can drive through, how does that jive with the legislation? How is the CRD overriding the provincial legislation that says they are on order of evacuation, but the fishermen can be in that evacuation zone for the half an hour it takes them to drive through it?
You know?
How does that jive with the legislation?
And that's gonna be a CRD question, not an RCMP
And
question.
I think, I think the questions around the state of emergency and stuff might, maybe we should leave those to the end, and we can come back to that.
So just let me to clear it out with you. You have no powers, like the local RCMP station has no powers to overrule the CRD and their
No.
interpretation.
No, I work within the framework that the CRD gives me on the evacuation order to achieve what I'm being, what the order is. So the order is, you will evacuate the Clean a Clean from Dowling to,
So the only way for us to guarantee anything is to have you advocate on our part and change in 7 days, when's the next order coming down? When's the next order to be written? How many days in are we in?
You're talking about the
7
local
days?
state of emergency expires on August 23rd,
That's
today, I think.
Okay, September 1st.
September 1st, September 1st.
So I was talking about the Caribou Regional District one, yeah.
So can you advocate right now for the premier to change the rules? So,
no, but what I can do is I can take more of your concerns. I've got no problem having a further conversation on this. I guess is really what I'm trying to say. Like, at the end of the day, this is your community, this is my community too. And I am here to serve you guys. And I'm not beyond having that conversation with you and doing what I
the
can.
conversation that my husband had with you last night is you cannot do anything,
Who's your husband?
Patrick,
Okay.
about letting the Clean and Clean
Yeah.
people come
And
through.
I actually,
You cannot do anything.
but I took Patrick's concerns, and actually, Mr. Richmond and I were on the phone a couple times last night, doing exactly what I said to your husband there, was I was advocating, okay, this is the information I'm getting, how can we work this? And Mr. Richmond and I had that conversation a couple times, so.
I think we'll have to sidebar this at this point.
For sure.
There's a couple other questions, this gentleman here and in the back for the RCMP, and then we'll move along to the elected officials, so, yes.
Thank you. My name's Tim Noble. thank you so much for your work. You've done a lot of work in the community.
I appreciate it.
And I think your members have done their best to enforce the rules as they've been laid out. But I think therein lies the problem. The problem is with the legislation. Because the moment that order was declared, we and all the community members that stayed behind were treated as if we were the enemy, as if we were criminals. And we went in one day from being valued community members to criminals. And that's not right. There's something wrong with the legislation that it treats people like that. We stayed behind to protect our homes and our community and to help in any way we could. And to be treated like that is simply wrong. So it's not the fault of the RCMP, it's the fault of the legislation, which really needs to be changed, and we need to have that conversation, because I think a lot of the complaints in this room go directly back to that.
If I could speak to that.
Thanks.
Actually,
Sorry.
I was gonna bring up the fact that we do, everybody knows it, you may not be on the email list, but that's exactly what we're gonna be doing, is trying to change that policy at the legislative level. So.
Thanks for adding that. And so one last question
I
at
just
the,
want to say one
Okay.
thing to Tim. Thanks for that, Tim. And actually, it was that the emails that you sent me right out of the gate there
Yeah.
that caused me to make that Highway 20 trip from
Right.
you guys all the way down to see Gerald and Joanna in Tatla
Yeah.
to start discussing how that, exactly said, that house arrest thing made people feel.
Yeah, that's the thing that stuck with me
Yep.
through this whole process, is that the whole thing just felt wrong.
Yep.
Because you guys were just trying to do your job, may not have been working out right all the time, but you were trying to do the job that was laid out for you. And I think the parameters of that are incorrect. They're simply incorrect, and it needs to be changed. And we need to work towards that somehow.
Could you tell us the year that Emergency Protection Act went in? Because we never had this happen in 2010.
And I don't believe I have that sitting on here.
It's been there forever.
You know, but that's something I can definitely confirm that for you.
No, we didn't get treated like that in 2010.
When did that come?
so, sorry, one person at a time. I think we'll have to sidebar this at this point. We have one question in the back left, and then we'll have to move on, and we can follow up on these questions after.
I just want to say a big thank you, especially RCMP, it hasn't been fun for my kids at all. They can't go to the beach, we can't do anything. But I had people come in the store and say, hey, come hang out with us. You know, we went and checked out the helicopters, the fire crew, let's climb all over their trucks, and it's just a big thank you. And for having a natural disaster, it really made it really fun for my kids.
You're awesome.
And we just had one last comment here.
I wanted to stand up and speak for the RCMP. We're all here today because the fire didn't burn Nimpo Lake down in Anaheim Lake. And those orders are there to protect your lives. And had the reverse happened and you had stayed home and the fire had burned through your area, there would be RCMP, armed forces, trying to come into your burning home and save your life. So cooperate with the RCMP. You're lucky they didn't declare martial law, because then they would fix bayonets and they would drag you out of your house.
All right, so now we're going to move on to our three elected officials. So we're just going to give them each of them, CRD Chair Al Richmond, MLA Donna Barnett, and Area J Director Roger Williams, a chance to just give a brief update, and then at the end of all three of them, we'll open it up for questions to whoever you'd like to speak to. So Donna, if you want to start us off.
So thank you. So I don't know how long that legislation's been in place, but it's been there for quite a while. And I went through fires in 2003, 2009, 2010, 2012, 2017, and it's never changed. And so I've never had this kind of a conversation with the community before. I think the main issue is, and I've heard from many of you, I have letters, and I've listened to what you're saying. I don't think we need to change the legislation. What we need to do is what they've done at Charlotte Lake. The community came together and they were prepared. Even though they didn't have proper information, I contacted them quite often. I would like to work with your communities to put together community groups. So if something like this ever happens again, you have the leadership, you have the knowledge, you have people in place to do A, B, and C, to contact the regional district, to contact the fire center, to make sure that all the pieces are in place to make your lives easier. And so as your MLA, I can commit to that. I will be going after the government for some funding so that it helps you get there. And so that there is something in place should it happen, that you've got the funding and the people so that you feel like you're listened to and like information can get here as soon as possible. We will continue to pursue the cell issue, which is very difficult because of the cost of the towers. Nobody wants to pay. But there is a program out there right now. I just finished writing a letter before the fires to tell us, with the federal government, we, before we got kicked out, put $40 million into NDI for cell and connectivity for rural communities. And I did have a plan, but it's kind of gone down the tube now, to ensure that rural communities are serviced better. So that's my commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. CRD Chair Al Richmond.
Thanks, everyone, and I'd rather be here under other circumstances. I miss my days when I used to have a place on Choco Lake and used to go fishing there because I used to cherish the place. So if any of you knew Dan Weir, he was a buddy of mine, and I miss him dearly. However, so since we started this thing on July 6th, we've done 120 orders and alerts. They've been changed and issued, and to the gentleman asked us how often we review them. Fire service was very correct. I said the evacuation order says that people should leave their area, and it's in legislation what that says. Scott's job is to interpret what he needs to do in order to make that work in his community, which is what he's done. Nobody, myself included, or the CRD, or the provincial government for that matter, said to Scott, go arrest someone and put him on under arrest. We did never, no, right.
So at no time, we were not under property arrest. We could have left our properties to go set up sprinklers on the neighbor's place, set sprinklers up on the hall here. We could have gone to the grocery store to get fuel. We could have set up a meeting together in order to get ready, fire smarter our places. We could have done that.
So, under, let me just find it here because I just want to find exactly where this is so I can read this to you, Jane, okay? I think I brought it with me.
Why have you done?
Sorry,
This meeting was mainly called because of the way people felt they were treated by the CRD. We feel that you were heavy-handed in the order. You didn't listen as soon as the order came, or the alert, and then the order came down. We got no information about what was happening. The forestry was almost as if they were tongue-tied to it. It's not their fault. They did a hell of a job. Scott has done a hell of a job. Everybody has, but the CRD is what brought on all the unhappiness with the people around here. Your small b bureaucratic system doesn't work for us out here. That's all I've got to say.
So could you delineate that? So what didn't work? The order is
The house arrest.
The house arrest!
The house arrest. The order.
Okay, so
The way it came down from you guys did not work right.
So the way the order came down from the regional district was after receiving a recommendation from the Forest Service, people need to leave. We provided the order, we provided the map, and we sent it out. And the RCMP and Search and Rescue would go door to door, tell people, it's been recommended you leave your home. So they knocked on doors and went there.
Why were we not differentiated from other communities? There were unique circumstances in Nimpo Lake. That's where I think the failure was.
And so that's when I have to go back to the people that made the recommendation to our Emergency Operations Center, saying you need to get people out. Whether that recommendation is right or whether it was reflective enough for just Nimpo Lake or unique to Anaheim Lake isn't something I have the ability to deal with, nor do our staff at the EOC. We get a recommendation, we get an area, and we acted in the best interest of your safety. And so to date, after managing 35,000 people, no one's died. That's a plus. Something we should also celebrate. So I understand that it didn't quite fit for what you felt your threat from fire was. I can't answer that question. The question that can be answered is how the fire center determined, and the incident commander, the threat they believed you were in, and your community was in, not what I believe. So the guy on the ground here, managing that fire, made that determination and made that recommendation. And you keep coming back to me, and that's fine. It's always safe to have someone to blame, and I'm quite prepared to take it. The issue is that we respond to a recommendation from the fire center, from professionals, as you do when you go to your doctor for a prescription, you decide to take his recommendation or not. Whatever you do, it's your decision. Our decision was to take the recommendation of the people who fight fire, that you were in jeopardy and you needed to leave.
If I may
That's as
interrupt
simple as
you,
that.
you gave an interview to the newspaper, or CFJC, in Williams Lake, and your words were, no residents in Anaheim Lake or Nimpo Lake are in imminent danger at this point in time. And just prior to that, the IC, Mark Petrovic, said, it's probably at least 16 days out before it's going to get closed, if it ever does, but I would like everybody on alert just so they're ready.
So I believe
Because
you're
it could make a
mixing
run
two
for it,
things.
which is good, that's a good one. We didn't mind being on alert. Our
Okay,
problem
so
was
that's
when
alert.
the orders came down,
That's correct.
okay?
That was an alert. This gentleman was talking about the order.
Once the order came down, then there's a lot of stuff that came with it, along with, if you could proceed, Scott, I'd really like to know
Sorry.
what your directive is.
So, sorry, so, okay, so just, I don't like the phrase house arrest. I think I get the feeling and why it's being used to describe how the communities are feeling. So what I have here, when you say what house arrest, not being able to freely move around here, verbatim from the Emergency Protection Act, it says, you may arrest pursuant to the Emergency Protection Act a person who is found in an evacuated area and fails without good reason to leave. And that's where the discretion comes in, without good reason. So for me in an evacuated zone, for me in an evacuated zone, I want everybody to be safe. I would like it if everybody would leave and go. But that's not going to happen, and I respect the decisions that each and every one of you made to stay. In the same token, I want to make sure I know where people are, so that if it does come, if all of a sudden the winds pick up, something changes, and okay, we gotta go, and we gotta go now. We're still going to go around. We're still going to make sure that even though we've done the evacuation order, if it's safe to do so, my people, Sergeant Morrison's people under attack, we're going to go back door to door to as many places as we can to say, okay, look, this has changed. Now we really got to go. But if people are out everywhere, it makes that job that much harder. And we run the risk of losing members of our community. It's been said a couple times. We've lost nobody in this entire process. And I'm thankful every day for that. I'm thankful that we've been able to keep track of where everybody is and everybody's been safe. It has been a major inconvenience. I get that. I hear that. People have told me that. There's some people I still want to talk to about that because of the way that came down. But if you came to me and said, no, Scott, yeah, I was out because my next door neighbor's gone and I got to get that sprinkler on his house, you know what? That to me is a good reason.
Again, we come back to the consistency between the orders that were given to your particular members that went out then, because obviously there was some inconsistency there.
Yeah, and that's where, as Roger said, communication. Some stuff wasn't coming back to me either in a timely fashion or at all.
But there wasn't enough access to that communication.
Okay.
When you get automated phone calls in order to get through, you don't get anybody. The CRD literally in Anaheim Lake has one person and one phone line available to the concerns of the resident that stayed behind. That is where the fear factor came in.
I can speak to that as well, because I attempted as a liaison for several of the communities to
Yes.
Ocacho, because Ocacho said, okay, we're gonna have updates every day. So I asked Jody by phone and in person before I was, had to go back home that last day, we were in the same meeting. They set me up as a communications liaison. I asked if I could go to those meetings every day. I asked for a permit. I was never given a permit. I tried for a week to get a permit. So instead, as you all know, I was trying to get information from anywhere so I could send you all fire updates, because none of us are going to stay here until there's a wall of fire coming right at us. We all wanted to have the option to make that decision, but we have to have good information in order to make that decision. And we were not given good information either by Caribou Wildfire or by CRD. Basically, we were running blind until I started pulling mapping systems down off the internet and started setting something up, and you guys all started getting updates. With regards to CRD, this question is also for you. I'll go back to Clean. Chris Chakowski did attempt to, Jody told me 3 days ago, Sunday, that they were going to be setting up an online system for permitting. And she was good enough to call me back and say, I'm still working on this, just so you know I haven't forgotten you. She called me back again later in the day or the next day, and she said, this is the deal. It's going to be set up. I have to get back to you with how it works. But she said, you have to go online, and you can go online to get your permitting system. Chris Chakowski, who's down in Clean, did that and was refused a permit to come up here for this meeting. Now, when you talk about, the permitting is difficult for you guys, it's a pain. It's a real pain when you can't get one, regardless of the reason, whether it's as a communication liaison for the communities, whether it's for Chris Chakowski or any other member of Clean to be able to come to a meeting like this and get information. We can't get permits. So I'd rather have a pilot guard too, to be honest. I really would, because nobody with a legitimate reason, with the exception of a few, can actually get a permit.
So I'm not sure about the online. You're asking that the gentleman lives in an order area in Clean, correct?
Chris Chakowski lives in an order area in Clean. She attempted online, she's attempted calling your office several times a website.
They won't be able to leave and then have a permit to go back in because we become liable for their well-being. So we won't give you a permit to stay in an order area because that would mean we're authorizing you to stay there, and we won't do that. You stay there at your own risk.
But in effect, for a half an hour, everybody's in the order, under order, when
I
they come
gotta say
through.
that you have a double standard for that, because I live in the Clean and I have a permit to come and go.
And I don't.
The only reason why is for Mr. Reg,
The ranchers.
the ranchers.
Yes.
So why do you have a double standard?
The
Because I
agriculture-
have cows, I'm special?
Well, we brought the BC
So-
cattlemen in, the agricultural people in, they could answer that question best. They're tasked with dealing with the ranching community.
So if you're powerful, you get it, and if you're not powerful, you don't.
Reg, can you answer that better?
I think I can help a little bit with referring to it. It definitely has dominated a good chunk of time here. So I think when it comes to the permit system, the reality is that there's a variety of different types of permits and different people who are responsible for different areas of that permitting. So there's permits that were granted for passing through an area, so someone who was in a clear area going to a clear area, then there was the potential for a pass to go through and do that and stay there. Maybe they lived in one side and they'd been caught away and they were just trying to get through and get home in a clear area. That kind of permitting was done. Every permit's its own individual case. And so there's no blanket in the permitting world. People who had legitimate reasons to stay and manage things like livestock, if we have 200, 300, 400 cows and we've got those in harm's way, if we've got them in a situation where they can break down fences, they can get on the highway, impede traffic, get in the way of the fire people, those kinds of things, that management had to be undertaken in such a responsible way as to make sure that that didn't impede the progress of the fight against the fire. And so there was some essential service designation that was provided to people in various types of occupations, such things as trucking in the food, such things as maintaining your land, the fences, the livestock. There's no one could go and care for those if you were removed from that circumstance. So each case was very unique and very different. So the permitting situation as it arrived went to a different agency depending upon the type of permit that was being sought at the CRD. So as far as what was granted and what was not, each and every case was presented, was worked through, had a certain list of protocols, and if it matched that protocol, then it would be evaluated upon its own merit and a determination that yes, this is valid and this person needs to be here, because the risk involved here is less than the benefit of that person being seen as an asset there rather than a liability. And so in some cases where you have large numbers of livestock and they need to be tended, someone would have to go in and do that. So it's better to have the person who knows that land, knows that livestock. We've heard that today. We understand that today, that people know their own piece of ground better than anyone else does. And so in our capacity, we heard that and we conveyed that message to the CRD, to the MOTI, to the RCMP, to the fire service. And each one of those, people behind me would tell you that it was hard won on its own merit. And so there's no willy-nilly permit. Each permit was considered on its own merit.
But
So,
there are so few people that chose to stay. The RCMP had the information on the few people that stayed. Why not issue them permits regardless, automatically?
well, as I say,
It would've
that was a
so much
decision,
simpler.
that was a local government decision that didn't even reach my phone for
Well,
certain.
yeah, I know, because
So-
there was no phone lines available to get hold of
Believe me, sir, my
CRD.
phone, something found my phone. I don't know whether it's because it's written on the washroom wall at the Husky, but someone found my phone number
Well,
20
definitely.
hours a day, and we helped them.
To get to you, I personally talked to you, personally, because at Towdistan and my place, we have animals, but still, it took nearly 2 days just to get through CRD to get to you. Once we got to you, there was no problem. But CRD was a problem that did not have adequate access to the people in the area.
I've heard you made that point, sir, and I think it's very well taken by the CRD. And I think that the understanding of the role of that person who receives that call at CRD, that's been an evolving process as I've witnessed it. And I know that those ladies are, in particular, are taking that job seriously, and I think they'll get better and better at it. So what you say is extremely valid, and I think that the fact that information can make the CRD better at getting that information, getting it in the right hands, because once it's in the right hands, it gets dealt with properly.
Yes, but it
Thank you.
takes time.
Yeah, no, thank you for that
Unfortunately,
observation.
and time when fire's up your butt, people don't have.
I hear you, sir. My range is on fire right now, new fire. And,
I think we have,
I just have,
Do you
I
have one
actually
more
have several questions, but I'm only gonna ask CRD one because I know what
is
lots of other
that,
people
am I
have questions.
good? We're good with the permitting thing? Any other permitting questions? I'm happy to help you. If somebody has an issue or need with permitting, please come see me.
So I know everybody else has questions they want to ask. I'll just be quick on this one. I will also say too that at the back I will put as many copies as I have of the proposal for policy change that I've been working on. Some of you may or may not know about it, most of you do. As well as copies of my email address. If you want to get information and updates, if you want to send anything to do with that policy change, just email me, please. Okay, so here's my question. This is from somebody that was caught on the other side of the roadblock when it went up, and they're from Charlotte Lake. They went up to Prince George as they're supposed to register.
One direction, it would have been catastrophic. We're very lucky that the winds that drove the fires just to the north, and it's not very far away, didn't do the same thing here. Because then, we could have had potentially those 3 fires occurred.
okay, so this gentleman was next.
One question to the fire boss. Do you have a schedule to reopen the highway or go back to alert and clean area? Or give a corridor along Highway 20 to go back to alert?
Well, I asked Highway 20 to be open the other day, so it's there in a permit system. And earlier when I was talking, if I can hold the lines today in this wind and this heat, I will recommend that the order come off.
Thank you.
Okay, the next was at the back there.
So I've got a question to the Forest Fire Service. Back in June, somebody had a campfire during campfire ban on the island on Nimpo Lake. And it got out of control and the winds were very strong. There's multiple calls to forestry about coming out to take care of this fire. They said there's nothing we can do about it. It's too late. and we don't have the insurance or whatever it was about getting firefighters on a boat to go and fight a fire on the island, which is only about 100 meters from the mainland, where there's multiple houses. If it wasn't for 5 locals taking action on this, none of Nimpo Lake would be here right now. How can that be changed? The policies for that?
I recall hearing about that. And I think you've got a valid point that there was some hesitancy to take action on it, and after the fact, realized that just because it's on an island in the middle of a lake doesn't mean it's something we don't need to pay attention to. I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about, so if there were some people that actually took action on it, are you one of the people?
I'm one of them. There's actually, all of us are here.
Okay.
That took part in that.
Okay, so maybe.
We went over there on our own with our own pumps.
Yeah.
There's, me, I was kind of the dumb one, go over there with a
shovel
and a rake.
But we needed that.
Holy crap, this is out of control. And if it wasn't for Bakers, Jane, and Richard, and Tom, and myself going over there,
yeah,
there's no doubt in my mind that Nimpo Lake would have been on fire, and it would have been gone.
We had winds in excess of 50 kilometers an hour. They were gusting right toward the mainland, so sparks were actually had potential quite easily to hit some of the more expensive houses actually on Nimpo, and then it could easily come around and wiped out Nimpo itself. I actually posted pictures, and then we had to get in the boat and get going, and it got a lot worse after I posted the pictures, but it had already crowned. And, you know, you guys that came out the next day did get a hold of me and said, hey, you guys did a really good job getting this suppressed. We knew we hadn't put it out, and they spent at least a day mopping it up. But it was, the first phone call as it was sent out to you guys was at 5 o'clock. It was actually 4 or 5. Tom called first, I called second at 5. And I was called again and said, listen, I'm looking right at this thing, it's kindling, these are the winds, this is where it's going. And he told me, well, he said, you know, we don't even know how to get a hold of a boat. And he said, WCB doesn't let us, you know, let people on fire too late, because if they get hurt, they can't be flown out, et cetera, et cetera. So we were there till 10:30, we were there till dark that night fighting it. So your policies might need to be adjusted.
yes, I agree.
I think, yes, Jen, back there. Yes, you.
Me again? I would like, I really like, I think there's a tremendous, really try to use good language, I mean, you know, like the words, it's the words. There's a tremendous, listening to you guys here, almost nobody knows me, there's a tremendous potential in this community for immediate help, like you just said. And I would like to say something, acknowledge and everything, I would like to say something about myself too. And I really want to get down to that idea of coming together as a community and help. The situation in Charlotte Lake is impossible. This poor lady, you know, being cut of everything, go there and get her out, you know. And my situation, I didn't know what I should speak. I was very close. I worked a long time together with Swiss government. So I know the governmental side, the laws and everything else. I used to be a German officer in the army handling nuclear weapons. So the potential, that's American warheads stationed in Germany. So what I'm saying is the potential here is so tremendous, it's so big. I went down 12 days into the precipice fire and helped there on a freewheeling basis, but I feel very bad about it because coming back home, that was the, what is it? It's not alert. It's we were under Nimpo Lake was under and Anaheim was under order. So of course I was a little bit afraid because I'm a U.S. long hauler, truck driver with bison, buffaloes. That's my normal job. In wintertime, I was a little bit afraid what happens if they catch me and I'm driving you around. I came back from the precipice, and I would like to pursue the idea that Anna says, you know, like found something here within Nimpo Lake because I see there's tremendous potential. People are willing to help. Like this old Bill guy, he's more than 70 years of age. He said, I'd love to come with you. So that's what I would, you know me a little bit better now because I'm the only officer, I guess, next to this American guy here. Officer, not in terms of police officer. I'm speaking of the German army. Yeah? And I see that potential in all of us. And if we somehow can, let's pursue that with permit or without permit and help where it's really needed, when it's needed.
All right, so a few more questions.
I don't have a question, and I don't know who to address it to. But because our area, basically 450 kilometers perhaps from Williams Lake to Bella Coola, has no cell service, I felt it was very unfair for an order to come down at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We only have a few days of a window of opportunity for people here to move back and forth to Williams Lake to get things that they needed to have, because we were not getting mail like we should have been. We did not have the opportunity. There were people here that needed to have proper fittings for their pumps, for their water pumps, that could not get it through the mail. So they took the opportunity on August the 10th in the morning to travel to Williams Lake and get these materials. My husband happened to be one of these people who was trying to service the area for people that needed to have internet satellite so that they could have communication. Many of them don't have landlines. We don't have cell service. These three people, and Scott, you know who they are. And this is being directed to you, and you can answer me later. The order came down. There was no notice to anybody so that these people could have had a window of opportunity to move back and forth into their own community. They got stuck outside because, too bad for them, the order came down at 4 and you didn't get here till 7:30 or 8. That is not acceptable in a situation where we live with no cell service, to let our family members know that they need to get back in. Did nobody think about this? If you're going to put down an order in the West Chilcotin, remember there has to be probably a 24-hour gate. You can have your checkpoints. The other thing is, we were told 5 days before that we could have an order. Oh, how long? Maybe 2 or 3 weeks, that's what I heard, I don't know. We could maybe have an order. Did anybody say where the checkpoints were going to be? Nobody told us. If you're outside of that 1 foot, too bad for you. We need to have that changed. We've been under orders before out here, lots in the past years. That has never happened before. And I was upset, Al, and I talked to you about it. And I talked to you about 2 ladies, and they're in this room today, that needed medications because they didn't know they were going to get locked out. They were allowed to come in and get their medications, and they were ordered back out. And I asked you, Elle, on the phone on Friday. I want an answer to that. Then you told me that my husband, because he is doing an essential service, that he could have been allowed a permit to move around. He even has to go out to service white saddle helicopters that have been fighting fires for us in this area. And I would like to know from you, Scott, why you did not get a permit for Richard to come back in. Because the very same day, I had a call from Richard Simon at the Nimpo store. Richard's locked out. There's no way he can get in. Nobody will listen. And Richard calls me in the morning. This is before we knew the order was coming off. He needs Richard to go down to the waterfront. There's internet problems, and he's got police staff at the waterfront. I need some answers, not just for me, not for our situation, which put us into a lot of stress for absolutely no reason, because it was probably a 40-minute drive for Richard to come back home, and there was no danger. That is unreasonable. And the house arrest went with it, and the girl at your office that answers the phone told me I could not leave my house. I would be under arrest if I got caught. So there has been a lot of information that has not been true, that has been given to us to put us into a fear factor.
So maybe you'd like some answers. So maybe we'll let, if you don't mind, maybe Al, do you want to provide any?
Well, the permits for people that were deemed essential services in areas under order, if they were deemed essential, then they would be given permits. That's what happened. Let me finish. That happened in Williams Lake. What happened in 100 Mile. You have to understand is that there's the 2 cities that were locked down. There wasn't a grocery store operating in those towns. We had people so confused they just outside wanted a permit to come to 100 Mile. I said, "What do you want for it?" He said, "I want to come shopping." I said, "Safeway's closed. There's nobody here." Normally in a lockdown community, there's nothing open. There's no stores open, only to serve essential services, firefighters, the police, and those people. That's all that's running in those systems. What I said was, if your husband had been deemed an essential service, if Scott had felt, or someone felt he was deemed an essential service, he would have been given a permit. He could have been given a permit.
Yeah, he could have, but he didn't.
Well, but I can't speak
You know,
to that.
but you see, that's the thing I'm hearing here today. Oh, there's permits, but you know what? People could not get permits. We're hearing two different stories. I don't know if you are, but we are. And then to top it all off, we were put under house arrest. I don't know if you're hearing that. But Scott, you weren't in our situation. That's what I was told by the police officer that came to my door from Lloydminster. And when I looked into his eyes and I heard his answers that were absolutely ridiculous, I knew the man had more fear than I did. That is not right. But you know what? We believed he was telling the truth. We didn't realize we could come to you. I didn't. I'm told something. I was told by your Krista, whoever it is that answers the phone. Like, you know what? I think there's an apology that has to come from you, police, CRD, and the fire service for the way we were treated, because we had fires here in 2010, and we did not go, we were ordered, and you know what? It was very kind. The officer that came to our door, she said, "Are you leaving? We suggest you leave." "No, we're not." She said, "I'll put a yellow ribbon on your tree, so I know that you're staying," and the people that left got a red ribbon, so there was looters, and someone got a blue, and it was like that. We're still under the same legislation, because it wasn't new since 2010. So something's changed.
Thank you for your feedback, and I think we can continue to have these conversations. I just want to make sure that we have time for any other questions.
No, so if I can just say one
Okay.
thing. So I got some stuff in my book, and I was actually going to have a chat with actually the three of you
Good.
when we were done here. Part of specifically what you asked me about only just recently came to my, like, basically what is this thing? Okay. For that, I will apologize, because that was, I think it was dated the 15th of August, and today's the 23rd. I got it, I think, yesterday or the day before. So I knew this was happening here today. It was on my task thing of actually going. Same with you, Jane, with some stuff that's come up there. It's not to take away from the group, but just with the specifics of conversations, and as I always said, in the interest of making sure we all get our stuff out there. So if it's okay with you, we can have a little chat about that
Appreciate your
offline.
apology,
It's not a problem.
Scott, Sean, I don't know what
Scott,
I'm
it's okay.
but honest.
It's okay.
You don't know how much I appreciate your
No, fine,
apology,
that's
and I'm pretty sure I'm speaking for everybody left in the room.
And we'll work through it. We'll work through
Because
it.
I have not heard any apologies from CRD. It's just been skate through, and it goes over the top like you don't even hear. I'm sorry, Al. That is what I'm hearing today from the people in this room. They are not understanding that you're hearing them. It's just going like this. And I don't know if you're tired or stressed, but I don't think you are hearing what we're trying to say.
So, I'm hearing what you're trying to say, and it's 49 days for me, and that's fine. That's not a problem. I'm used to working long hours anyway, so 49 days is nothing. It's not a problem. So, in 2010, the guy that signed the same evacuation order for Nimpo Lake was me. Nothing changed from CRD's point of view,
Then
okay?
why did we come under house arrest this time?
Well, see, that's just your interpretation. I have to
No.
go back to, no.
No,
ma'am,
it wasn't.
Ma'am,
Not
please,
okay.
from the Caribou Regional District's point of view, the same order, the same legislation, the same activity took place. How is perceived, how is delivered, who delivered it to your door? It wouldn't have been Scott?
We had to sign a disclaimer
Who's
on top
responsible
of
for
that.
that?
Yes, and that, yes, that's.
And
the ta-
we're told we are not allowed to leave the
So,
property.
I can't, so sir, I'm just telling you, it's the same legislation.
Who did it, Al? Who did it?
Who delivered-
Who put us under house arrest? Because
So Scott
Scott's
went the
saying he
under,
did-
so,
he's
no,
saying
they
he
weren't
did
with
it.
the under house
No.
arrest.
Scott only followed orders.
So
They weren't house arrest, were they?
So no, it was not house arrest. Now,
There you go.
if the perception of the way the message was delivered, that's what I think I'm hearing. So this is the first time I've heard, I knew about the whole signing of the form because we were documenting who was staying.
Yes.
So was it that form that gives you, as an individual, the perception that you were under house arrest?
No.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to clarify.
Outright told,
Okay.
you cannot leave your property.
Okay.
Period.
So what I'm hearing then, so if one of my guys, whether they're in my uniform, whether they're in dark blue, says you cannot leave your property, cut and dry. So the way the message was delivered then, and what I'm hearing, the way that message was delivered and interpreted is wrong. My guys weren't clear. I'm just trying to understand if I'm hearing you right and if that's the general consensus of the room. Okay.
One person at a time, please.
Okay,
One person at a time.
I don't think that it was the RCMP's fault. You guys were given explicit orders that you were supposed to apprehend people if they went off their property.
Okay.
So I don't see why you're defending this when the fault lies with